Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Nicole with Sonar Sewing Patterns, and in today's video we are continuing on the Sonar throwback train, and this week we are leveling up, folks. We are making the first bag in the series, and it's a great beginner bag because it'll be challenging. You'll add a zipper, you add some hardware, but it's minimal hardware and it's straightforward techniques that really run the gamut of all patterns. It's something that will be useful in every single bag pattern, and it's great for the experienced seamstress because they're wonderful to batch sew. You can really customize it. You can sell them very well. This is consistently, I would say, over let's see, I'm comparing this to like the Paradigm Crossbody or the Callisto bag or the Sirona. I would say that this pattern consistently sells the most, quickly followed behind the wide Callisto. So in today's video, we will be making the Mini Box Tote. Now this guy was inspired by a sewing friend that I made online many moons ago. She made a bag very similar and I loved it, and so I asked if I could replicate it. She said yes, and then with her permission I wrote the pattern. So I called this the Mini Box Tote. It's just a pretty straightforward boxy design, hence the name. It's about 8 by 8 with a 2-inch gusset here. Perfect everyday bag size, but it's not a huge bag. And as I said before, it is very consistently one of the best sellers on my table. Let's see, so the amendments to the pattern are few. The biggest being the side connectors here. I make them, instead of being an internal coming out of the 2 layers, I add my hardware here. I will not be showing how to do the original way, but if you want to see that, find the video in the description box, and that is the first video based exactly on the pattern and how I wrote the pattern. But if you have any of this hardware, you can do it like this. I find it much quicker and easier. And of course, this hardware is available on my site. And let's see, I'm trying to think of other amendments. I like to add interfacing to the cork as well as the lining now, just for more structure and overall longevity. And aside from that, I made this strap 3/4 of an inch instead of 1 inch. Otherwise, it's still the exact same as written in the pattern. I love this one. Always a client favorite, and I hope that you love it too. Please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, you know, all the usual things. And I will see you guys at the end of the video. Material overview before we get started. I have everything here prepped and ready to go. Starting over here on my right, I have my strap. Now I have decided to make my strap 3/4 of an inch wide as opposed to the original 1 inch wide. You can make your strap as wide as you want to. You just need to make sure that your strap hardware corresponds with the width that you are going to be making your strap. Alternatively, you can use pre-made webbing or pre-made strapping here as well if you want to avoid this process altogether. So if you want a 1 inch wide strap at the end of the project, you need to cut a piece that is 2 inches wide. Or if you want 3/4 of an inch wide, you cut a piece that is 1.5 inches wide. So basically the full measurement divided in half will be the width of your final strap. Next up, I have my zipper here along with my zipper end cap that I will be attaching to finish off the end. I have my strap hardware, and I will be using my arches here. I have these available on my website if you're interested in trying these out. They do come with corresponding D-rings, but for this project, I will be using 3/4 inch square rings here just to keep a cohesive look. I have rivets that I will be using throughout the project. Moving on to the actual pattern pieces, I have 2 of my main panels here. These 2 corks here will create my main panel, and I will be using a combination of Cobalt cork and Scorched. You can get both of these corks from Fabric Funhouse. Don't forget to use code SONAR10, all capital, for 10% off your first order. So this will be my main panel. This is going to be my zipper panel. This is going to be the interior top piece here. And then for my lining, I'm using this fabric. Now, I've had this in my stash since 2014-ish, maybe. I can't remember the full designer's name offhand, but I will put it up on the screen. I will look up the selvage and put it up on the screen for you guys, but I just love this. I used to be obsessed with this print. I had it in red and orange and all sorts of other prints, or all sorts of other colorways as well, but I am just absolutely obsessed with this print itself, and I'm so stoked to have found it in my stash because it matches the corks perfectly. So I have the 2 lining panels. Then I also have the pocket panel on the inside. Now I am making mine a slip pocket, but you can easily add a zipper to it as well if you want an interior zipper pocket, but you will also have to cut out a strip of zipper tape that will be the same width. The first thing that we will work on is our 2 exterior panels. So you're going to grab the 2 mains and then very simply lay them right side together and clip along the bottom edge. And then now we're going to go to the machine and just stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip open and finger press, and then I'm going to butterfly my bottom seams down here, which I'll show you once I get over there. I'm going to butterfly my seams, and then I'm going to do a double top stitch line to add some interest to these front and back panels here. For this project, I will be using Tex 45 polyester bonded thread from Wizardry in the color Eagle Blue. It matches the cobalt cork perfectly. I have a size 18 needle, and I will be working with at least a 4 stitch length. I do like the look of a long stitch length, but you do whatever you want. Okay, to finger press, you are just going to simply fold the bottom piece down and finger press, apply pressure, and then on this back side here, split the seam open and finger press, and then from the front side, we are going to stitch down both sides of our seam here, keeping the seam open, hence the butterfly. Here are my 2 completed front and back panels, and if you want to add a tag, this is a great opportunity to do that. And really what I'm looking at to decide on which panel I add it to is which one I did the better top stitching on. So I'm going to choose this guy here. But I also wanted to point out that I have really been getting into the added structure of Decaville Light on the back of my cork. So I did cut out a piece here. You'll see it's a little short on the top, and I did that intentionally to reduce bulk. But normally I do like to extend it all the way through to the seam, so that way the seams also have some extra oomph in them. But if you want to, you can add some Decaville Light or some interfacing to the back of your cork to give it some added structure, like I did. So to add my tag, I have my brass tags here. And I'm just going to add it centered here, about 1 inch or so up from this seam line. So now the next thing we need to do is add our box corners here, and I'm going to do that with my acrylic template. I do sell these on the site. Just going to mark these out and then snip these. And then now I'm going to lay these panels right sides together, matching up my side seams, and clip everything into place. Now I'm really focused on matching my side seams. If for whatever reason my bottoms or my sides don't match up perfectly, that's fine. I'm just going to let it come out in the wash whenever I'm stitching this together. But what I'm really focused on are these side edges. So once you get it clipped to your liking, to your comfortability, we're going to go to the machine. We're going to stitch it down. And then with our needle in place, we are going to pull our panels together and make these bottom edges meet up. And then we're going to continue stitching down, do the same thing here, and then all the way back up. Be sure that you're back stitching well at all of these start and stop points. Now from here, we need to push out our corners to box our bottom. So I'm just going to reach a hand in and push on both of these corners. And because we stitched them so closely together here, what you should see is that they stay pretty well lined up. Now you can butterfly your seams open, or you can put one set of seams to one side and the other to the other side. It's totally up to you and what you're comfortable with and what your machine will handle. But what you need to do is align these seams. Now what you should notice is that whenever you're pulling and applying pressure on the panels, everything should lay into place, and you can nest these seams by pushing them together. Push them in opposite directions and they should butt right up next to each other. You just want to make sure that everything is correct. Pull on everything, apply tension before you stitch across this edge. So I'm going to stitch here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then repeat that for this side. All right, our exterior is now complete, but before I flip it right side out, I am going to trim just a touch. You don't need to take off too much because our seams are already only 1/4 inch. But I like to take off some of these box bottoms and a little bit of this bottom edge, because when the lining is in here, it helps everything kind of settle in nicer and not add height, unnecessary height, because the lining can't sit all the way down. So I do like to trim that little area. And then if I need to, I can trim a little bit off the sides, but I'm not too concerned with that. I definitely do not trim this first inch up here because I want to be able to have enough runway for whenever we are doing the drop-in lining later. So once you get it all trimmed up, you're going to flip right side out. You want to make sure that you get your corners nice and pushed out. So really push into your corners on both sides here. And then because I added that additional interfacing, sometimes it can be a little wrinkly. So I will take my iron and just steam this to lay flatter and nicer again. And then another pro of adding the Decaville light is you can finger press some hard seams into your edges here. And it just helps to create that shape that we're going for when the bag is completed. Before we move on though, I did want to point out, if you have a pretty big discrepancy here in your two panels, like if they're not even, go ahead and trim across the top and make it nice and straight now, because when we do the drop-in lining later, it'll just help everything sit correctly and you don't have a big issue with everything lining up. Before we get too far, I want to go ahead and knock my strap out of the way, just because getting the whole bag done and then having to do the strap at the end, it always bums me out. So I like to do that either first or in the middle of the construction process. So I am just going to, regardless of the size that you cut for your width, you're going to make a line down the center of the entire panel. And then I like to use tape. So I'm going to put a piece of tape across the center line. And then I'm going to fold both long edges in on that line. And that will create the end width of our strap. All right, I am prepped and ready to go on my strap. You can see here is my middle seam. Now you can either do 2 stitch lines or 4 stitch lines, but either way, you need to stitch down either side of this middle seam. So you're going to have 2 stitch lines down the center of your strap. If you want to, you can also do the perimeter. All right, here's my strap with the quadruple stitch line. I love this look. It's always so fun to do. To finish this off, I am going to attach my strap slide just so that it is totally prepped and ready to go for whenever we get to the step where we are adding our strap. So I'm going to add my strap slide on the side where I started and stopped my stitching, because that's where I have some back stitches and it's just more apparent that I started and stopped there because there's contrast thread. So you're going to add your strap slide. You're going to go up and over this middle bar here and then overlap about an inch or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm going to add one punch here in the center and then add my rivet. Now, if you don't have rivets and a rivet press or way to set rivets, you can easily add some stitches here, add a box stitch to attach these two pieces in place. But if you do have a rivet, then attach it by whatever means that you have. And then now this is prepped and ready to go for the way that I am adding this at the end of the construction. Now, if you are adding lobster clasps to your hardware, then you would go ahead and finish that out now by sliding one lobster clasp on and then putting your strap up and back over the same spot that we just did over the center, and then adding your other lobster clasp right there. And then you would have a detachable strap. All right, let's get our zipper panel ready to go. So I have my strip of zipper here. I've added my pull and I have my 2 zipper plackets. I also have the zipper end cap prepped and I have my double stick tape here. I'm going to tear off just a small section, and on the wrong side of my zipper tape, I'm going to add that right at the end. That will stay closed. The way that you know that is if you add your zipper pull from the right side, it's going to open and close from the left side and vice versa. So you want to add your tape and your zipper end cap on the end that will stay closed the entire time this bag is alive. So add your tape there, peel the paper, and then we're going to fold this into thirds over the wrong side of the zipper teeth like so. And then you just simply slide your zipper end cap onto the zipper tape. You can add glue in here if you need to. I have not found it to be necessary, especially if you attach the screw correctly. So grab your little tiny screw that comes with it, and then you're going to attach that in the screw hole in the back. And then if you get it in well enough, then you won't have any issues with that coming off. Okay, so the next step in our zipper plackets is we need to add some tape to the wrong side of our zipper plackets. And also I did want to point out that I went ahead and added one thin layer of Mod Podge around all 4 sides of my zipper plackets here to seal the edges. Now this is the Mod Podge that I use. It's just the matte Mod Podge. This is a water-based sealant that I add to all of the edges of my pieces that I'm not edge painting. So grab one side of your, or grab one of your zipper plackets, and I like to pre-finger press this so that way I know what I'm working with whenever I attach it to my zipper. So get a nice pressed edge here on both of these guys. And then you're going to pop your zipper teeth open at this other end. And then you can unzip it, give yourself some more working space here. And I'm going to peel this tape. And then this can be a little bit fiddly, but what we need to do is create a 90-degree fold, and we're putting it about 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch from this edge of the zipper placket. Whatever way you want to do that, go for it. I'm going to tape it, and then you're going to see me bend it and add the zipper tape to this double stick tape here to hold it into place. And then I'm going to fold this closed, aligning all of my edges. So I overlapped it about 3/8, 1/2 of an inch there. And now I'm going to just fold it back toward me, creating this bend in the zipper tape. And then being careful and feeling where the zipper placket is laying on the back side of the tape, I apply it to the zipper placket. Now, if you need to adjust, go for it. This is not permanent. But that is how I create the 90-degree fold when I'm making the mini box tote. Now, once I get this settled where I want it, then I will fold this up. And I'm using my nail, and I can feel through the zipper tape here where the end of the zipper placket is on the wrong side of the zipper tape. So I'm just using my nail to figure out where the perimeter edge is, and then I'm aligning all of my edges. And it should look something like that once you get done. And I'm going to repeat that for this side. Now when I'm doing this side, I'm going to ensure that the top edge of my zipper placket is at the same height. See, this is not even at all. So I need to adjust this and move it down. The zipper placket is now completed, so we will move that to the side while we work on creating our interior pocket. So you're going to grab one lining and then your pocket. And on the back of the pocket, at the top of the panel, so you need to be very aware of this if you're using directional fabric, you need to draw this box where it looks like it's upside down if it's directional. So this goes on the bottom of the fabric for you if it's directional. But you measure 3/4 of an inch all the way around and then draw 2 parallel lines. I did 3/8 of an inch. If you're using a zipper, you're making this a zipper pocket, then you might want to consider making this a 1/2 inch box so that way you can fit your number 5 teeth if that's what you're using. Once you get your once you draw your box, you're going to align the top edge here and center it along this panel and clip it into place. Aside from measuring, an easy way to do this is to fold and create a finger press line there as well as in this panel, and then you will just align those, and you want them to be right sides together. So align their center mark and then clip. And then we're going to go to the machine and we're going to stitch just the parallel lines, so just the long lines. I will not be doing the sides. For this process, I did lower my stitch length to a 3. Once you have your 2 parallel lines stitched, we need to cut just down the center of them, not all the way to the end, about 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch from each end. Like so. And I'm going to take scissors and nip a V cut almost to the end of the stitches, but I do not want to cut through the stitches. Looks like that. Next, I'm going to finger press and flip my pocket panel through the hole that I just cut. I find that it helps if you finger press first on all of the edges. And then you're just going to reach in through the hole and pull it through. So you just want to finger press and push and pull on the panel until it lays nicely. And then the next thing that we are going to do is go back to the machine and top stitch around this opening that we made. Once that is top stitch, I'm going to fold up the leftover edge of my pocket all the way up to the top like so, and stitch around the 3 open edges to complete that pocket. Okay, so folding this up, aligning all of my edges here, finger press the bottom fold. And I'm going to start at the fold. So I flipped my panel upside down for me. Start at the fold, stitch up, pull my main panel out of the way and stitch across the top here, my 2 pockets closed. And then lastly, I'm going to pivot and stitch down this side here. All right, this panel is now complete. So I'm going to trim just a touch. I'm going to peel back this top level here, top layer rather, and trim down this top section. And then what we do is we're going to center our zipper panel on top of this, right side up. So this panel is right side up, and then this is also right side up. So center and clip. And then you want to grab one of your top pieces, the really narrow piece, and lay it right side down on top of everything, creating a zipper placket sandwich. And then now we're gonna go back to the machine. We're gonna stitch here at 1/4 inch and then flip and top stitch. I am going to bring the remaining lining and top panel piece and finish this off over there. Okay, so I am going to pull everything, this top section and the zipper placket, I'm going to pull up toward the top, and then I'm going to fold this back down on itself and then top stitch this. Okay, so now we're going to repeat this same exact process with the remaining lining and top panel piece. And what I like to do is lay the remaining lining piece down, and then I will lay this on top and then match up my side seams to ensure that everything is even and centered. And then create that sandwich, stitch, flip, top stitch, just like before. Same thing now, we're going to flip this entire panel away and then finger press this all down toward the bottom and top stitch. And once we get our panels stitched, this is what it should look like, and you're just going to simply fold them right side together, and we're going to complete this interior section. So I'm looking at a couple things here. What I'd like to see is my two top pieces lining up as well as my folds. Now that doesn't always happen, but those are the two things that I'm looking at first. So I'm going to clip up here, and then hopefully these meet up. I'm off by a touch. I'm not too concerned about that, so I'm just going to add a clip there, flip, and then do the same on this side. Now of course the zipper is in your way, so just do the best that you can. And then toss one in here. And then now we are going to stitch around our interior panel the same exact way that we did the exterior. So when we get down to this section, we're going to back stitch well and then pinch our two pieces together and continue across. Okay, unzip your zipper, and then just like we did on the exterior, we're going to reach in and box our bottom corners the same exact way. Okay, so here's our completed interior. So just like we did for the exterior, I'm going to trim down my seam allowances. And again, I'm not really messing with this top section here. Now you might have noticed when you were cutting out this interior pattern piece, I tapered the lining so that we didn't have to make any amendments to the seam allowance as we were stitching. I do not like a saggy interior, so in all of my patterns, I have taken that into account when designing my pattern pieces, and you'll notice that I taper every lining that I make, just to, you know, avoid that saggy interior as much as possible. Okay, so I trimmed everything down. Now you might notice I have some extra stitches here, and that's because I forgot to add my little interior woven tag. Can you see it down in there? Yeah, there it is, my little sonar tag. So I just went back and popped that there into the center. So here is what our interior should look like. You can do the same thing that we did on the exterior. If you kind of pull on these corners, you'll see that it creates a nice fold, and then you can train that by finger pressing it. And then this just kind of helps create the shape before we marry the two, the interior to the exterior. If you want to, you can definitely iron this and create these folds to be a lot more structured, and it looks quite nice when you look down into the bag. It's just a perfect square down in there. We are now to the stage where we need to put the interior inside of the exterior to complete the bag. Before I do that though, I want to add some double stick tape here along the inside top edge of this exterior bag, and I'm going to finger press my seams open and then add some 1/4 inch tape just along the top edge. If your machine does not like double stick tape, then I highly suggest you bumping it down out of your seam allowance. So there is the double stick tape. You can see I did it about 1/8 of an inch or so down. I got a little haywire over here. That's totally fine. It's all good. When I was adding the tape though, I did butterfly my seams open. I like adding the tape now before I do my dry fit, because as you can see, it just kind of pushes the bag open and it makes it easy to work with. And so before I peel anything, I'm going to test fit my bags. So I'm going to tuck my zipper tail inside, and then we're going to put the lining inside the exterior. I like my pocket to be at the back, so I know that the front of my bag is my tag here, so pocket backside. And then just kind of put them together. When I'm doing this test fit, what I'm checking for is I'm putting my fingers like a peace sign into the bottom 2 corners, and I'm making sure that the corners align down here at the edge, the bottom edge. And you don't want any weird gapping here. Now this might be happening because I haven't taken the time yet to finesse where I want everything to go. So I'm going to show you how I do that now. So I always make sure I do a very thorough test fit before I peel and top stitch, because if it's not a perfect fit, it will become apparent whenever we are top stitching this. So I butterfly the interior seams open, line them up over here. Same thing on this side. Now, a lot of times I do need to go back in and make some amendments to the fit of this, and I usually can get away with doing that to just the lining, and that is the goal here. So line up my 2 edges, whoops. Line up my 2 side seams here, and then I can tell just by looking at it that it's too big. I can see even when I kind of pull and adjust this looks like it's fitting nicely, but you can see there's a bubble here. So I can tell that I need to pull this panel out, this lining panel, and I need to tighten up my side seam. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to start about halfway, 1/3 of, or 2/3 of the way down, and then just kind of tighten this stitch line up and pull it in incrementally. And I will do that until I get a perfect fit within the interior and the exterior. Now, when I am tightening up my lines here, I don't snip these quite yet. I will once I know that this is the correct line that I need to be working on. But before I trim all of that out, I'm going to put them back together and see if that works. Because you can always take off, but you cannot add back. And I might have taken too much off there, so. This is the process of this bag that makes you very successful. If you can ensure that you have a nice fit on this process, then you will be good to go for a nice final product. So as you can see, I'm just working my way around the panel, clipping every so often. And then, so this looks like a pretty good meeting point here. This looks like it's meeting up nicely. I'm going to finish my test fit, and then if it is correct, I will pull it back out and trim down that side seam. All right, that looks great to me. It looks like it's fitting a lot nicer now. And that is what you want it to look like. You don't want it to be stressing and pulling on it anywhere. You want it to just sink in nicely. I always like to zip it up, make sure that this interior isn't kind of askew, because it will be very apparent if it is. If your side edges, your side seams don't meet up, this interior will sit at an angle and it just makes the whole bag look a little funky. So always zip up your placket, make sure that everything looks nice. And then once you're satisfied with everything, go ahead, unclip, and make any final trim adjustments that you need to make. So in my case, all of this I'm going to take out. So because I want to keep this top section up here, I'm just going to trim out my thread so that I can butterfly it. And then I will just trim this off. Just like so. But so you want to give yourself a nice flat edge to butterfly your seams here. Get everything figured out. Once you get everything kind of in the rough layout again, now you can start peeling your paper. So I'm going to peel to expose my side stitches first, because that's the important part that I want to get nice and lined up. So I just peel off enough to expose that. Line up those edges like so. And then now you can slowly work your way around the entire top of the bag. And what I'm doing is I'm lining up the two top edges here. Make sure that you apply pressure, make sure everything is nice and stuck. And really at this point, if you wanted to avoid the top stitch, I know that this is the scary part here. If you're planning on edge coating the top, you could totally get away with avoiding or skipping the top stitch. You could just edge coat and that will seal these two panels together. But if you want to, you can top stitch using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around the entire panel. I always start and stop on one of my side seams because I will cover that up with hardware later. So it's a good way to hide that start and stop back stitching. So you might notice that I was really crunching the bag down in order to get a nice straight top stitch here, and that's okay. But what happens is that Decaville Light gets crinkly again. So I'm going to show you how I steam it to get all of these little creases out of here. But first what we want to do is I want to trim up any overlap here to give myself a nice flat, even edge for top coat. Or edge coat, I guess that's what it was called. I'm not super concerned about all these little frays. I'm going to burn those off in just a minute. And those will be hidden when I top coat. Why do I keep calling it top coat? Base coat, edge coat, geez Louise. So I've got my little mini iron and I've got a spritz bottle and I'm just going to put a little bit of spray on here. If you want to, you can use a piece of cotton in between the layers. But as you can see, I'm just quickly moving the iron on top of the cork, and what it's doing is it's steaming the cork, and because it is a natural substance, it's tree bark, what happens is it's swelling and it's going to push out any little creases that I made while doing my top stitch. Cork is water resistant. You can see how it's just kind of beading all over it, and it makes it really easy to steam and fix any discrepancies that you might have. There we go. No harm, no foul. So now what I'm going to do to finish this off before I add my hardware is I'm going to add my top coat my gosh, again, I'm going to add my edge paint here along the top rim. If you're not going to do that, I do suggest doing some sort of Mod Podge like I did on the zipper placket, just so that it avoids doing this in the future when the bag is in use. All right, we are all edge coated here along the top. I went with a natural color to match and pull out from the strap and the base here. But we're all prepped and ready to go. I went ahead and bent my hardware, and if you haven't seen how to do this, I will link the video below. So I have my hardware, my rivets, my strap, my rivet press, and my punch here. And what I'm going to do is put this square ring inside so that way I have the proper spacing. And I'm going to slide my hardware right around the edge here of my mini box tote. And then I'm going to mark where I want this hole to go. Now, some people are reticent to punch a hole right in the seam. And if you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. You can bump it toward the back here, and then you can put this one slightly toward the front. That would be really cute, and it would offset the weight distribution. But I have not had any issues with punching right through the seam here, so I'm going to do that. I feel like as soon as I punch through the seam and then I add the rivet, that it immediately solves any problem that might arise. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Put your hardware through, add the other cap on the other side, and then you press into place using whatever tools you have. There we go. I just love the look of this. It's so subtle and simple and straightforward. There, it's not like too much zhuzh, but it's just enough to catch your eye. And it's so easy. It also alleviates the need to edge coat around the perimeter. But of course, if you don't have this hardware or you don't like the look of it, you can add the strap connectors the original way that I outlined in the pattern, and that just involves creating a piece of cork that would wrap around the outside, or you could sink it between the two internal layers, or in between the exterior and the interior layer, and stitch it right in. So you have several options. If you want this to be even less hardware, you can alleviate the strap connector altogether and just stitch your strap straight into the side. But I would think that you would still want to continue with the strap adjuster here, so that way you can take your bag from low crossbody to a stroller bag. But you could really get away with just the zipper and a strap adjuster if you wanted to. All right, so I've got this one going. Just need to set this into place, and then we'll add our strap. So because this is the front, I'm going to keep this face up, uncurl this. Now I'm paying attention to keeping the side that has the open seam up. And I'm going to put that right through this side connector here. Make sure that nothing is twisted. So once you ensure that nothing's twisted, you're going to slide this open end of the strap up and back over the center bar here, and then back down, again, making sure nothing is twisted. Come in from the outside and loop through. Now you can take up as much space over here as you want to. I usually do about an inch or so, and then I'm just going to punch one hole here in the center and add a rivet. And then there you have it, folks. Your mini box tote is all done. What do we think? I hope that you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making this bag. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, subscribe, click the bell if you want to be notified for every time I make a new video and put it out. And I will see you guys back here, same back time, same bat channel next week. Later.